Hello, welcome to Lady Love Said Reads. My name is Jessica, and this is my reading wrap-up for August and September 2025. If you're new here, sometimes I read some dark and twisted stories. So if any of the books that I talk about today interest you, please do make sure to check triggers before picking them up. I don't share triggers on my channel because I think that they can be spoilery. But if you have any concerns about triggers, I recommend the app Storygraph to look for information on what triggers might be present in the books. I read all kinds of different genres, all different age ranges. I rate my books on a 5-point scale or a 5-star scale. 5 stars is like new favorite, 1 star is problematic in some way, and then anything that is a 3-star or higher I recommend. I haven't done my stats yet. I'm going to do a separate video going over stats for the summer, and then maybe I'll do a separate one for fall stats later on down the road here, but I just haven't had the time to dedicate to calculating up everything. I do think I'm still on track with my goals. I don't know for sure. I've got to sit down and do the math. So a stats video will come later. I'm just going to talk about the books that I read. When I talk about the books that I read in my wrap-up videos, I like to play the game MASH. MASH is a numbers game we played in the 90s, and it predicts your future, like who you'll marry, what kind of house you'll have, what your job will be, and so forth. So what I do when I play MASH is I have put all of the books that I read in August and September into this apothecary jar. I shake it up and I draw 4 books and put them in 4 MASH categories. The 4 categories are house, meaning what setting of the 4 would I want to be in. Romantic partner, meaning of the 4 books, what character do I have a crush on or do I find crush worthy. Friend or family group, pretty self-explanatory. Of the 4, which family group would I want to be in. And then job. So let's go ahead and just draw the first round. Oh, another thing to keep in mind. I film my wrap-up videos in multiple filming sessions. So you're going to see changes in lighting, outfits, angles. Sorry if it's annoying. It's really the only way I can get through these videos. I can't sit down and do them all in one sitting. Okay, first round. There are 20 books in this, so we'll do 5 rounds. Whalefall by Daniel Kraus. You've got to be kidding me. That's the first one I draw. A Carnivore's Inquiry by Sabina Murray. Granny Undercover by Harper Lynn. Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. Let me grab these books. Granny Undercover by Harper Lynn. This is book 2 in the Secret Agent Granny Cozy Mystery series, and in this one the main character and the sleuth is like a 70-ish-year-old woman who is retired from the CIA. So she's got this wild past of working for the CIA, and in this one a local gardener dies and she suspects foul play, and so she goes undercover in this gardening club to try to find who did it. I love this series. The books are short and easy to digest, and they're funny. Like, lots of laugh out loud moments in this series for me. Just a really fun, entertaining time. I gave it 3 stars. Would you like it? You would like it. If you like older sleuths, you would like it. If you like a cozy that has a lot of humor in it, and I know there's folks out there that really do like the funnier cozies, so you might like this one. You might like it if you like just a quick, fast read. For MASH, I picked setting because I would also like to go undercover with a granny, and out of the 4 books here, that's what worked best with that book. A Carnivore's Inquiry by Sabina Murray. This is an adult literary thriller, and it's about Catherine. And Catherine, wherever she goes, people end up dead. And it's pretty mysterious, but this book is also just very cerebral. Like, this is a big thinking book. It's literary. It's very literary. And the major theme in it is cannibalism. So, you know, be warned of that. But there's these little anecdotes in here about cannibalism throughout history. And it really is like a slow burn and a slow build up to the end of this book. I loved it. I think that the bookternet is sleeping on this one. I am surprised more people don't talk about it. This is a book that I think will be really, really popular in the bookternet crowd that loves supporting women's wrongs stories, in the crowd that loves women versus the void or sad girl lit fic. If you read and enjoyed A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers, you would like this. They are very similar in tone, in theme, etc., in structure. If you read and enjoyed Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan, you would also like this, because there's this really unhealthy relationship in it that's very similar to that book. I gave it 4.5 stars. For MASH, I picked Job because one of the characters is a writer and I would want nothing else to do with anybody else in this book. Talking as Fast as I Can by Lauren Graham. This was the Lovestead buddy read for August. And it is Lauren's memoir. It says from Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls and everything in between. And that's basically what it is. She doesn't do a whole lot in this other than just tell her story of how she ended up an actress and ended up on the show, and some behind the scenes information about Gilmore Girls. I don't feel like she covers any like major big ideas, or, you know, it's not a Green Lights. It's not a I'm Glad My Mom Is Dead. It's not a Page Boy. This is just a pretty run-of-the-mill celebrity memoir. Nothing stood out to me about it. I will probably keep it just because when I rewatch Gilmore Girls, I will want to thumb back through the parts where she talks about her experience in Gilmore Girls and like be like, oh yeah, that's when this is happening, that's when that's happening. If you don't like Gilmore Girls, I don't think that you would like this. I really don't. If you do like Gilmore Girls, you would probably enjoy reading this for the behind the scenes information. And like, she's just Lauren Graham, and Lauren Graham is Lorelai. So if you just like her voice, I would recommend listening to it on audio as well, because she does read the audiobook. I gave it 3 stars. For MASH, I picked Crush because she works with the actor Scott Patterson, who I think is quite crush worthy. He's the guy who plays Luke. All right, Whalefall by Daniel Kraus. This book, I read this book in one setting. So what happens in this book is the main character is like a 20-something young man, and his dad has died, and his ashes, his remains are somewhere in the ocean. And so they are a family of scuba divers. So the young man decides to go scuba diving to try and locate his dad's remains. In the process, he is swallowed by a whale. Yep. And so what happens with the story is you get this like disgusting, stressful storyline of him trying to escape the whale. It's very sci-fi, that part of it. But then you also get this larger story about grief. And that story about grief and the way Kraus writes about grief, I was sobbing. I have never cried so hard reading a work of fiction as I did reading this book. Like, I was on my floor sobbing, hiccuping into my hands, because I've experienced a lot of grief in the past 5 years, complicated grief. And this is about complicated grief. And like, it was incredible. It was incredible. This is a new favorite book of all time for me. The easiest 5 stars that I've given to a book all year. I will never forget the experience I had reading this book for the first time. It was unforgettable. Hence, I won't forget it. Like, and I don't even know like what other books to compare it to. I haven't read a whole lot of sci-fi, and this is pretty sci-fi, you know, with him trying to escape the belly of a whale. Yeah, so I don't really know what to compare it to. Like, it's its own thing. And I haven't read Moby Dick. I don't know if you could compare it to Moby Dick either. But go read it. For MASH, I picked Friend or Family Group because this man's friends and family just check in on him constantly and love him and support him unconditionally. And who wouldn't want that? Oh boy, this might be rough. Okay, so it's 90 degrees out, so I'm wearing my tank top. I've been dealing with migraine, so we've got glasses and they're staying on. And my battery might die, so this round might be kind of quick, but let's draw 4. Another by Paul Tremblay. Eclair in Present Danger by Laura Bradford. Valor by John Gwynne. Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Another by Paul Tremblay. This is a middle grade horror. I didn't realize it was middle grade at the time, otherwise I would have saved it for October for Halloween. But this is about a kid whose parents get this rotary phone, and the rotary phone, someone calls it and they're like, hey, my son wants to come over and play with your son. His parents were like, okay. So this guy arrives with his son, and his son's actually like a doll, like an animated doll. And then things happen from there. It's very spooky. It's like a Goosebumps, only longer and more detailed. And I would compare the writing style to Josh Malerman, which y'all know how I feel about Josh Malerman. But the thing about it is, this was a middle grade. Like, that writing was perfectly acceptable and fine for a middle grade. Josh Malerman writes adult, and to me, his books read like bad middle grades. Anyway, I gave another 3 stars. For MASH, I picked setting because that was really all that was left to pick from with this round. The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This is book 1 in the Dream Harbor romance series. It's like a small town romance, and people often compare this series to the Gilmore Girls because it's really cozy and like, I don't want to say it's whimsical, but it's like cozy and low stakes. And so in this one, this gal inherits the Pumpkin Spice Cafe and runs into all kinds of trouble and meets a love interest in town, and it's actually pretty spicy. It's pretty high spice. I would give it like a 3.5 jalapenos. And my jalapenos are based on how graphic the scenes are, not how much I like them, so that you can decide if that will work for you. I know some people are really sensitive to smut, so I give it like a 3.5 for jalapenos in terms of graphic sex scenes. And I mean, overall it was fine. Like, it was a nice little bit of escapism, I felt like, but it wasn't going to be an all-time favorite. So I believe I gave it 3 or 3.5 stars. And for MASH, I picked love interest because that love interest really does seem a lot like Luke Danes, which, if you hadn't picked up on from the last round, I find quite crush-worthy. Valor by John Gwynne. This is book 2 in the Faithful and the Fallen high fantasy series. It's an adult series. I read this as a read-along with my friend Amy on her Discord. Amy Harvard in Pages is her channel, and so she's been hosting a read-along of this series with a group of folks. Great group of folks. It's been fun reading with them. And this picked up where book 1 left off. I liked it better than book 1, but it's still a 3-star read for me. So this one was really high action. I mean, it was just action, 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 to the point where there was so much action and it wasn't really doing anything to actually move the plot forward. Like, I've never read a book where there was so much action without anything really happening. Right? They were either in a battle or preparing for battle in battle practice. Like, oh my gosh. But then the last probably 25% of the book got really good, where there was actual character development, actual forward movement with the story and everything. And because of that last 25% or so, I ended up giving it a 3-star. Up until that point, it was definitely a 2-star reading experience for me. And like, I like action, but the action has to be doing something. Like, it can't just be there just to be there. And that's what I felt a lot of it was. Like, it felt gratuitous and unnecessary. I don't think John Gwynne is a favorite author yet. I'm going to keep going with this series because I'm having a great time reading with this group of folks, and curious to see how John Gwynne will improve his writing in the next book, because in this book it was improved from the first book actually in a lot of ways. So we'll see if he continues to improve in the next one. So yeah, I gave that 3 stars. For MASH, I picked Friend Group, especially the friend group that travels around with Corbin. All right, and then last, Eclair in Present Danger by Laura Bradford. This is book 1 in the Emergency Dessert Squad series. This is the trilogy along that my Discord is doing right now in conjunction with Mr. Francie at Mr. Francie Reads. His Discord is the Sparkle Cafe, so we're doing our first ever joint Sparklestead production and reading it together. And I really enjoyed this first book. So this is about a woman who inherits a vintage ambulance, and she renovates it to become a traveling bakery, and they call it the Emergency Dessert Squad. And then of course, you know, there's a crime that she has to solve because it's a cozy mystery. One thing that I really appreciated about this book was that she is really good friends with a bunch of like older folks, like people who are 70 years old and older. And this book does a lot to address ageism. So she really pushes back on a lot of like ageist attitudes that various characters have towards her friends who she loves dearly. And I really appreciate that because I don't feel like you see that very often in literature where there's pushback against ageism. So I really liked that. And I really just enjoyed this super cozy, fun read. I loved the characters. I thought they were so wonderful, so entertaining. And I'm looking forward to book 2. I believe I gave this 3.5 stars. And for MASH, I picked a job. One of the characters is a writer, I believe. Another character is a paramedic. And then, you know, there's the bakers. And like, I would enjoy any of those roles. No pun intended, roles. Next round. Broken Country by Clare Leslie Hall. This Moth Saw Brightness by A.A. Vacharat. College Girl Missing by Shawn Cohen. And Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. Broken Country by Clare Leslie Hall. This is an adult historical fiction, and it is about this love triangle and lots of tragedy. I thought that this book read like a British telenovela. It felt very over the top to me. It felt like a soap opera, like the melodrama. Wow. But a lot of people are really, really loving it, saying it's like one of their favorite books of the year. So listen to multiple reviews about it. Don't just follow what I say. Historical fiction and romance typically don't work for me, and this is a little bit of both. So there you have it. So I gave it 3 stars for MASH just because it was the only thing left for this round, and I didn't want to do this one for any of the other 3. I picked Crush, but I honestly don't know who I would crush on in this story. They're all, I don't know, maybe the main character's actual husband. Like, he seemed like at his heart he was a really good guy. But yeah, this story was just messy. College Girl Missing by Shawn Cohen. This is an adult true crime nonfiction, and it's about a college-age woman who goes missing in Bloomington, Indiana, and she was a student at the university there, and nobody finds her, and it just is a cold case. So this author is a journalist who followed the case initially when she first went missing, and he developed a relationship with her family, albeit kind of a rocky one because he's a journalist and didn't always paint the missing woman in the best light because she had struggles with like drug use and things like that. Was a bit of a partier, but eventually as time went on, the family decided to let him like tell the story in more detail, and so he got the right to writing the book on this case. It's still an open case, really interesting case. I have my suspicions about who done it, but again, this is like the only book on the case that's out there, so it's just one perspective, and who knows. like with other true crime cases I've followed, there could be another person write about it with a new perspective that will change my mind. So that's part of why I think true crime is really interesting, because a lot of times, like, we just don't know. Like, we just don't know. And that's why a lot of these cases are still cold cases. We just don't know. There's just no proof of anything. So I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was well done, and I gave it 4 stars. For MASH, I picked setting. I had to think about it for a second. I picked setting because I shouldn't say that. I'm going to dox myself. And I can't, okay, so like I've tried like 4 different times to explain why I chose setting, and each time the explanation would lead to me basically doxing myself. So I can't really tell you why I chose setting. I just chose setting for this one. This Moth Saw Brightness by A.A. Vacharat. This is a young adult science fiction, and it's about this study that's being done on teenagers, and it's like big non-disclosure kind of a study done by the government, and they get a big payout and healthcare the rest of their lives and all of this stuff if they participate. And so this group of teens participates, and this book really gets into questions about research and who do we pick to do research on. What bodies do we think work best for research? Why do we choose those bodies over other bodies? Why do in history we have cases where certain bodies are seen as disposable, therefore we can run all these experiments on them? Like, this goes really, really deep for a young adult. It gets into like the history of research in the United States, specifically like government funded research, and like it gets into research on autism and perspectives on people with autism, and how a lot of times people with autism and other disabilities are picked to do these studies because, again, we see their bodies as disposable. Like, this was an outstanding book. I went into it not really knowing what to expect. I just saw that it had autism rep, and it blew me away. Like, I'll be honest, like, this is one of the best sci-fis I think I've ever read. And just the level of thought that this goes into. And I love that Vacharat does not assume that teenagers can't handle this level of critical thinking. Like, I love that I love that they assume that teenagers who read this book have the capacity to understand these big ideas being presented in it. And then that there are these big ideas means that adults can really enjoy this and get a lot out of it as well. And it would make for some really good conversations between teens and adults in their lives if they like read the book together. Yeah, this is just a fantastic book. I gave it 5 stars. And for MASH, I picked Friend Group. If you read it, you'll know why. Okay, and last for this round is Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. Matthew Perry, you probably know, is one of the lead actors in the TV show Friends, which aired in the 90s and was like a pop culture phenomenon. Still a very popular show today. It's one of my favorite shows. And this book really, it talks about friends, but it really primarily focuses on what he calls the big terrible thing, which is his struggle with addiction. And it's heartbreaking. Oh, it's heartbreaking. He's so honest. Like, he's brutally honest about his experiences, his choices, his struggles. And it's heartbreaking, but it's so, I don't know, like, I feel like this is a book, if I was teaching a psychology of addictions course, I feel like I would make this assigned reading in that course, because the way he explains his experience in addiction and the way he describes like the mechanics of how it works in his head and in his psychology and in his feelings and in his body, like, it's such a good, detailed, honest portrait of addiction. Yeah, I would definitely assign this in an addictions course. So, I mean, that in itself made this a really good book. He is a good writer, or was a good writer, And he talks about in this how he was writing screenplays, and he ends it on such a note of hope. Like, he's so hopeful at the end, which just breaks your freaking heart knowing how his story ultimately ends. So yeah, this one will stick with me for sure. I gave it 5 stars. For MASH, I picked Job. One of the jobs that I think would be really interesting in the film industry is being a casting director. And he talks a little bit about the process of being cast in Friends. And I find that part of filmmaking and making of television to be so interesting. And I love like fan casting novels and thinking about who I would cast in these different roles. And I've done it since I was like 9 years old. Like, I think casting is such a cool, fun, and interesting part of filmmaking. So that's what I would do if I had a job based on this book. I think I have 2 rounds left, so let's get through them here. The Ingenue by Rachel Kapelke Dale. The Grieving Body by Mary Frances O'Connor. The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Looks like this round's gonna grab all my nonfiction. And Free Fire by CJ Box. The Grieving Body by Mary Frances O'Connor. This is an adult nonfiction about grief. Specifically, it looks into the physiology of what happens in our bodies, like scientifically, when we are experiencing grief. She gets into a lot of the research around grief and different components of the research, different lines of thinking about grief and healing. I would say that this deals more with understanding the physiology of grief than it does with healing from grief. Throughout the book, she weaves in her personal story of grieving after she loses her mother. And so she's able to kind of tie the science into her personal story to give it some context. And I really appreciated this book. For me, I found it really helpful because the type of person I am, I do really well when I can understand the science behind what's going on with my brain. Like when I understand the science behind depression, when I understand the science behind a traumatic response to something, it helps me know how to effectively cope with whatever that situation is and whatever that feeling is. And it becomes a powerful tool for me. This might not work for everybody because it doesn't really get into a lot of like coping strategies or anything like that. It's not really self-help. It's more research based. But for me, it's helpful to understand the research, and it helps me to contextualize my own experience with grief. I gave this book 4 stars. For MASH, I picked, what did I pick? Oh, friend group. It would be really cool to be among friends, family, and others who understand these components of grief and can therefore respond to people who are grieving more effectively. Free Fire by CJ Box. This is number 7 in the Joe Pickett series, which is a Western crime thriller series that I have really enjoyed. I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot about this book. I read it in one sitting on a night when I was really struggling mentally. I read it as escapism, and I listened to it on audiobook, so I was listening to it while I was gaming and dealing with some big feelings. And the book honestly kind of went in one ear and out the other. I remember after reading it feeling like, wow, I really enjoyed that. That was really good. I know that it has something to do with a lawyer who has found some sort of loophole in a law that's allowing him to get away with killing people. And that's all that I really remember about it. Another thing that I remember about it is that it picks up on Joe's storyline and gets him back into investigating after he has to kind of step away from it in the last book. So I felt like that was like a really cool way to bring him back into investigating things. I don't want to say more than that because it'll give some of the series story arc away if you want to read this series, but the little bit I shared there isn't super spoilery. Yeah, I wish I remembered more about this. I'm going to have to reread it. You know, there's like 25 books in this series. So by the time I get to 25 and I loop back around to reread it, because I do believe, you know, fingers crossed, as long as it keeps going with the same quality that it's going now at book 7, 8, I do think this will be a series that I reread over and over again. So I'll just have to reread Free Fire a little more closely next time I get to it. Definitely look at other people's reviews on this book if you want more information. I did give it 4 stars. After reading it, I remember feeling like it was good enough to give it 4 stars. But honestly, the day that I sat down and read that cover to cover, it's pretty hazy in my mind because of everything that I was sorting through and dealing with emotionally. So for MASH, I picked romantic partner. I think Joe is honestly a really good husband. He isn't perfect, but he's honest about his imperfections. And he and his wife really work through things in ways that I feel like are healthy for them. So The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This is adult nonfiction, and it is a very short, it's more of an essay than it is a book, to be perfectly honest, but it's just a little bit too long to be formally called an essay. It's very short, but it is about the service economy. So this idea that we don't have to function under capitalism the way that we function under capitalism, that there are alternatives to the way our economy works right now. It is a little pie in the sky. It is a little bit like in an ideal world, and it doesn't really give you concrete ways to actually implement this form of an economy. So it's not, but I don't think it's trying to do that either. I think it's trying to just introduce the idea and make people start considering it. It does give you little ways that you can engage in service economy and gift economy kinds of things in your own life, like doing what we do here on BookTube, where we are essentially, unless you do this for a living, giving away our time for free talking about books. That is a service to a community that we're providing, and that is an example of gift economy. We are using our time, our energy, our resources to create something for others. So she gives little examples of the gift economy, and she does address, you know, this might not work. This might not work in totality, but it can work on a small scale. It can work on an individual scale. I really liked this. It made me think about things. I love that it presented some new ideas. I really like Robin Wall Kimmerer's writing. She is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass, which is an excellent book. I gave The Serviceberry 4 stars, and for MASH I picked setting, because it would be wonderful if we could live in like this idyllic world where we just function through barter and a gift economy. Like that would be utopia, right? The Ingenue by Rachel Kapelke Dale. This is an adult thriller, kind of a literary thriller. Kapelke Dale kind of bridges that line between literary horror and thriller. And this is about a woman who was a piano prodigy growing up. Her family has this like historic home in Wisconsin, and the matriarch of the family in this family always inherits the home. It's passed down on the maternal line. And the woman's mom dies, so she's expecting to inherit the home. And so she goes back home, but then she finds out that someone else has inherited it. And so it's kind of unraveling this mystery of like, why did her mom do this in her will? And it's complicated. This also addresses SA, basically, of children, pedophilia. Think in terms of Lolita, like the book Lolita. It has a major Lolita storyline. I'll put it that way. I thought it was well done. There are some really quotable moments. The ending is a really nice, like good for her, revenge kind of ending. a little bit unhinged, but not as unhinged as I would like it to be. So I would say this was like a solid read for me. I'll probably reread it, to be honest. I'll probably reread both of Kapelke Dale's books that I have, which is The Ballerinas and The Ingenue. But I won't say that it's like in my top 5 favorites of all time, which a book doesn't have to be to still be like a really good book to recommend. So I feel like it was a solid read. I'll reread it. I gave it 4 stars. This was also the Lovestead buddy read for, I believe, July. Yeah, July. I was behind on my buddy reads. So this was the July buddy read. Other people in the Discord who read it seemed to also have similar feelings where it was like, this is a solid book. Maybe not a favorite of all time, but solid. And for MASH, I picked Job because a lot of the characters in this are academics. All right, and the last round, I was looking at my Goodreads last night wondering if this was going to come up in this one because I was looking at it and I was like, I don't remember a whole lot about that book either. Role Playing by Cathy Yardley. Blood Trail by CJ Box. There's only 3 here. There should be 4. Oh no, what am I missing? Wundersmith by Jessica Townsend. Hang on. Let me see what I'm missing here. Because there should have been exactly 5 rounds. Alright, I figured it out. It's a whole latte trouble by Kayla Hensen is the last one. There's a reason my brain just skipped over that one. That was actually really easy. So let's get the worst book that I've read this year out of the way, which is A Whole Latte Trouble by Kayla Hensen. This is an adult cozy mystery, and it is set in a world that is perpetual autumn. So it's always autumn. Every single day is autumn. And every single day is like hardcore autumn themed. The pumpkins, the apples, the pumpkin spice, the cinnamon rolls, right? The main character runs a coffee shop and she's preparing for the fall festival. And she's got this like special maple syrup that is her grandmother's recipe that she uses to make a specific latte. And the maple syrup goes missing, and so she has to figure out where it went, and that's the mystery of it. I believe this book is AI. I don't have any way to prove it other than the cover. And how terribly written it is. So this book was so weirdly bad. So weirdly bad. Like weird time jumps that didn't make any sense at all. So the character goes and talks to this person who owns a hotel and tells her about, oh, I'm missing these syrups. I'm going to go talk to this guy who owns a brewery. And the hotel owner is like, yeah, you should do that. Okay, mind you, she hasn't told anyone else that she's going to go talk to this guy at the brewery or whatever the bleep it is. And then she gets back to her coffee shop, and the other character that works with her at the coffee shop is like, how did your conversation with so-and-so at the brewery go? She never told her. She never told anyone at the coffee shop she was going to go talk to so-and-so at the brewery. The only person she told was the hotel owner. And it was like weird stuff like that where there was no continuity whatsoever in this story. And like lots of repetition. And just weird stuff where it's like, did you even read your own book before you posted it? There was absolutely no editing that went into this in terms of the story. The grammar and mechanics were okay, but like the actual story just makes no effing sense. No effing sense, which makes me believe this was AI generated. Because something written by an actual human would have made more sense. Even if it was poorly written, it would have made some sort of sense. This doesn't make any sense. So, I gave it 1 star. Because if it is written by a human, read your freaking book before you post it. Yeah, anyway. 1 star. For MASH, I picked setting. Because the only thing this book had going for it was those cozy vibes. That got really repetitive. Like, if you took a drink for every time they used the word nutmeg in this book, you would pass away. Okay. Blood Trail by CJ Box, which is Joe Pickett number 8. I do remember this one. So this one is about someone unaliving hunters. And like there's this activist coming through town that's like, hunters are murderers. They're evil. Hunting is unethical. Nobody should ever hunt. So of course that's like the suspect, right? But is he the one doing it, or is someone framing him? All right. So what I really like about Joe Pickett novels is that he often addresses some philosophy behind things like environmentalism, preservation, conservation, and things like that. And one of the big questions this book asks is hunting ethical? So it is addressed through multiple perspectives and different characters throughout the book. And CJ Box doesn't tell you what to think. He just gives you the perspectives. He just gives you the perspectives and lets you decide what you think by the end, which is a really cool approach to these kinds of ideas, I feel like. And the mystery in this was good. It was thrilling. Good character development, especially good character development with his children in this one. I just love his daughters. They're so fun, spunky. One of them's just like their dad. One of them's just like their mom. It's just, they feel like real kids, you know? So really good character development. And I gave it three stars. I think on retrospect and on reflection, I would bump this up to like a 3.5 or 4, actually. For MASH, I picked a romantic partner again because, like I said, Joe Pickett's a good husband. Wundersmith by Jessica Townsend. I have the book somewhere. This is book 2. No, yeah. This is book 2 in the Nevermore series, which is a middle grade fantasy. And I'm rereading this series. As I've said multiple times in multiple videos, I'm not going to repeat it here. Watch my October TBR if you want an explanation. But this was a reread for me. And it was more of a skim read because as I was reading it, I realized I do still remember like a whole lot about this book. The plot, the characters, details, lots of details. So it was more of a skim reread, but I really enjoyed that process of just being back in the world and reading the writing and all of that. Gave it 5 stars. This is truly one of my favorite middle grade series of all time, so I gave Wundersmith 5 stars. For MASH, I picked Friend Group. If you read this book, you'll learn that while the main character, Morgan, does have some struggles socially, as the series progresses, her friend group gets closer and closer and closer. All right, the last one, Role Playing by Cathy Yardley. This is an adult contemporary romance. It's about gamers. And the one gamer, the woman, she is divorced and her kid's gone off to college. And she just lives kind of an isolated life. Like, she works from home. She doesn't get out much. And she has joined this gaming group. And then the male main character, I don't remember a whole lot about him, but like he's just had some struggles and he's also in the gaming group. And I DNF'd this because for me there was just too much gaming content. I'm not super into gaming. I'm not, and it was too much gaming content. And it wasn't like, I'm not against gaming content. That can be fun sometimes, but it was like the actual like levels they were playing. You know what I mean? Like descriptions of the level they were playing in the game without that really moving the story anywhere or anything like that. I don't mind gaming in a book if it clearly moves the story forward. Similar to what I said about Valor. Like, I like action in a book if it moves the story forward, if it's there for a reason. So there's like some gaming in this that I feel like, okay, it's just too much gaming content for me. I'm not a gamer. I'm not going to enjoy gaming content just for gaming content's sake. And I felt like there was some of that in this. Other people might really like it. Like, if you are an avid gamer, you might really like that. You might really enjoy it. I've seen some really good reviews of this book online of my fellow booktubers and others really enjoying this one. I really like that it was a middle-aged couple that they were focusing on. So I really did like that about it. And the writing itself is pretty good. Like, the character, they feel like real people, right? So it had potential to be something that I like. I just was getting so tired of the gaming content. So as a DNF for me, for MASH I picked Job. Yeah, the main character, I think she is like something to do with publishing. I think she's an editor. I could be remembering that wrong, but that's what I picked. All right, those were my reads in August and September 2025. Have you read any of these books? What do you think about them? Do you agree or disagree with any of my experiences or thoughts on them? What were some of your books from August and September? Do you have any recommendations for me based on the books that I loved in this video? Definitely let me know if there's something that you would recommend. If you just want to leave me an emoji to let me know that you're here, go ahead and leave me a whale emoji, because out of this batch, hands down, my favorite book was Whalefall. That's honestly my book of the year at the moment. So leave me a whale. And until next time, make sure that you continue to read good books, drink a coffee, take care of yourselves and each other.